To begin sewing your jean zipper fly, you will need your left and right front panels with any front pockets already completed, your zipper facing, or in production we called it the J-piece, the fly shield, and your jean zipper. The zipper length will be as long as your J-piece with some space above and below for sewing. And you want to use a metal zipper here because they can lock into position, whereas plastic zippers will sort of naturally unzip themselves when the button is unbuttoned and are generally not as durable. I use a YKK number 4.5 zipper. Start by finishing the raw curved edge of your J-piece. I'm going to use a serger to finish all my edges here, but you can also finish edges with a zigzag or faux serge stitch on your home machine. To finish your fly shield, start by folding it lengthwise, right sides together, and sewing it together along the short bottom edge. In production, we would sew this seam at a slight angle. Turn it right side out and serge the two long edges together. Now finish the center front curved edge of your right front panel only. Use your hands to straighten the fabric going into the machine rather than trying to curve the fabric through the machine. To begin sewing our zipper fly, we're going to grab our left front panel and our fly facing. On some patterns, you might find that the left front panel and the facing are all connected in one, and in this case, you're just skipping the step of sewing the fly facing to the left panel. The first step will be to sew that, but we want to attach the zipper first to the fly facing. But how do we figure out where the zipper goes and in what orientation? So I'm just going to walk through how it's going to get put together. So this will get sewn here, and we can even use pins to help us assimilate what we're doing. This is going to get sewn here and turned to the inside of the left front panel. Then the zipper is going to be behind this, and to make it even more understandable for me, I'm going to turn it right side. So now I can see the zipper is in the orientation that I'm used to it being, so it's facing up, and I want to make sure that I sew the left side of the zipper tape to the left panel. The right side of the zipper tape is going to the right panel. So I can even take an extra step there and pin that so I don't get confused about which side of the zipper tape to sew. If I pull this here, okay? So this is where I need to sew the zipper. And you wanna make sure that your zipper head is face down because this is gonna be turned to the back and now it's face up again. So zipper face down, and then we're doing this side of the tape. Now, where exactly do we want to put the zipper on the facing? Well, we know that we need 1/2 inch to use as seam allowance for when we attach it here. So the zipper needs to be to the right of that 1/2 inch. And then also at the top here is where we're going to attach the waistband. And so we also need 1/2 inch of seam allowance there. So I'm going to mark that there. So we don't want to accidentally put our zipper head in the area where we need to attach our waistband. And you also don't want to put it down so low that you end up with this gap in your fly. So we want to make sure that the metal is kind of as close to 1/2 inch as possible, but we don't want to accidentally hit it with our needle when we go to sew the waistband. And then we want to be just to the right a little bit of that 1/2 inch line. And then we're going to sew this side of the tape down and leave this side open for the right panel. You don't need to worry about using a zipper foot here. The goal is not to get as close as possible to the zipper teeth because that can actually interfere with the zipper head. I'm just using the edge of my foot, which is kind of putting me right in the middle of the zipper tape where I'm sewing. After sewing the J-piece to the left front panel, turn the seam right side out with the J-piece going towards the inside of the panel, and we're going to sew a top stitch a 1/16 inch away from that sewn edge. You want to roll the seam slightly here towards the inside so that you don't end up seeing the fold from the outside of the garment. Next, we need to secure the fly facing down by doing our signature J seam here. At its simplest, you can just follow this shape here and just go somewhere in between the edge of the tape and the end of the facing, and you want to be below the metal bar here and above the edge here. You also want to remember not to catch the right side of the zipper tape because that's for the right side of the garment. So if you want, you could go ahead and put a pin in here holding it up, because otherwise it's just really easy to forget and sew that down. But you have a lot of creative opportunities here for what you want to do. Usually there's a twin needle for a jean garment. There's 2 stitches. Sometimes they run parallel and then they merge together. Sometimes they stay parallel the whole time. On like a more of a chino pant, you would find just a single seam. I kind of have started with this wide twin needle look on the pocket, so I might just continue that here. And I'm gonna use my ruler and my marking tool to help me get a nice guideline for this. I think I'll do 1.5 away from the edge, and then I'll just curve in nicely. I'm going to mark where the bottom of the zipper stops here so I can make sure to avoid that. And then I'm just going to do something that I think looks pretty. So I might go parallel here and then gently slope up, and then I'll just do a parallel stitch next to that. Okay, that turned out quite nice. So we are ready to attach the right side of the panel to the zipper now. So the zipper tape, the right side zipper tape, is gonna get sandwiched between the front panel and the fly shield like this. So to line this up, we need to make sure that the top of our left and right panel are equal. And I use my serge as where I put the edge of my zipper tape. It's about 1/4 inch. So we're gonna line up here, and I've also turned the flap away so that I won't accidentally catch that. But we need to move this zipper head out of our way because that is gonna keep us from sewing right here. So I'm gonna put a pin in so I don't lose my location, and then I'm gonna zip the zipper head out of my way. So the next step is gonna be sewing as close as I can to the zipper teeth that my foot will allow, which I think for my foot's about a good 1/4 inch to 3/8. I'll measure it when I go to sew it. And we're gonna sew it from the top of the tape to the bottom. When we get about 3/4 of the way, I'm gonna stop and we'll lift up, remove it from the machine, close the zipper, and then start this stitch back up. Now, you can sew the tape first and then lay the fly shield on, lining up with the top of the waist again, and then lining up edge to edge here, and sew this down in 2 strokes. I'm gonna sew both of them at the same time just because that's the way I'm used to doing it. So here we go. Now, turning the garment to the outside, we will sew a top stitch on top of the seam we just sewed, along the edge of the right center front panel, securing the fly shield in its place. It is now sitting behind the zipper, protecting your skin from touching the metal. The zipper is now completely attached to the front. All we have left is to finish sewing together the rest of the front rise below the fly. I like to do this by lining up the 2 bottom corners, top of the inseam, bottom of the front rise, and starting to sew this seam normally, right sides together at a 1/2 inch seam allowance. You can only get so far before the sewn fly starts interfering, so get as far as you can without sewing anything other than the 2 front panels. Clip the serged seam allowance at the bottom of the fly shield to allow it to be folded to the opposite side. Also, trim down the seam allowance here that isn't finished with a serge. We're going to sew the seam allowances to one side, and we'll make the finished side sit on top, hiding this raw edge. Turn your garment to the right side, and you'll see that the front rise is almost sitting perfectly in place, minus that little gap below the fly. Begin top stitching at the bottom of the J-stitch at a 1/16 of an inch from the folded edge all the way down to the bottom, making sure you also are sewing through both layers of the seam allowances underneath. Sew a second row of top stitching to further reinforce. Bar tack at the bottom of the J-stitch through all layers. I like to do this by sewing 3 stitches back and forth a few times. Also bar tack around the base of the curve of your J-stitch through all layers to keep the fly shield in its place. And that's it, you're done. Thanks for watching and happy sewing.